This is a reading from the book of Genesis, chapters 37, 38, 39, and 40. Jacob settled in the land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is his family history. When Joseph was 17 years old, he was tending the flocks with his brothers. He was an assistant to the sons of his father's wives, and he brought his father bad reports about them. Israel loved Joseph best of all his sons, for he was the child of his old age, and he had him made a long tunic. When his brothers saw that their father loved him best of all his sons, they hated him so much that they would not even greet him. Once when Joseph had a dream, which he told to his brothers, "Listen to this dream I had. There we were, binding sheaves in the field, when suddenly my sheaf rose to an upright position, and your sheaves formed a ring around my sheaf and bowed down to it. Are you really going to make yourself a king over us?" his brothers asked him, "or impose your rule on us?" So they hated him all the more because of his talk about his dreams. Then he had another dream, and this one too he told to his brothers. "I had another dream. This time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." When he also told it to his father rebuked him. "What is the meaning of this dream of yours? Can it be that I and your mother and your brothers are to come and bow down to the ground before you?" So his brothers were wrought up against him, but his father pondered the matter. One day when his brothers had gone to pasture their father's flocks at Shechem, Israel said to Joseph, "Your brothers, you know, are tending our flocks at Shechem. Get ready, I will send you to them." "I am ready," Joseph answered. "Go then," he replied, "see if all is well with your brothers in the flocks, and bring back word." So he sent him off from the valley of Hebron. When Joseph reached Shechem, a man met him as he was wandering about in the fields. "What are you looking for?" the man asked him. "I'm looking for my brothers," he answered. "Could you please tell me where they are tending the flocks?" The man told him, "They have moved on from here. In fact, I heard them say, 'Let us go on to Dothan.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and caught up with them in Dothan. They noticed him from a distance, and before he came to them, they plotted to kill him. They said to one another, "Here comes that master dreamer. Come, let us kill him and throw him into one of the cisterns here. We could say that a wild beast devoured him. We shall then see what comes of his dreams." When Reuben heard this, he tried to save him from their hands, saying, "We must not take his life." Instead of shedding blood, he continued, "Just throw him into that cistern there in the desert. But don't kill him outright." His purpose was to rescue him from their hands and restore him to his father. So when Joseph came up to them, they stripped him of the long tunic he had on. Then they took him and threw him into the cistern, which was empty and dry. Then they sat down to their meal. Looking up, they saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, their camels laden with gum, balm, and resin to be taken down to Egypt. Judah said to his brothers, "What is to be gained by killing our brother and concealing his blood? Rather, let us sell him to these Ishmaelites, instead of doing away with him ourselves. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh." His brothers agreed. They sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver. Some Midianite traders passed by, and they pulled Joseph up out of the cistern and took him to Egypt. When Reuben went back to the cistern and saw that Joseph was not in it, he tore his clothes, and returning to his brothers, he exclaimed, "The boy is gone, and where can I turn?" They took Joseph's tunic, and after slaughtering a goat, dipped the tunic in its blood. They then sent someone to bring the long tunic to their father with the message, "We found this. See whether it is your son's tunic or not." He recognized it and exclaimed, "My son's tunic! A wild beast has devoured him. Joseph has been torn to pieces." Then Jacob rent his clothes, put sackcloth on his loins, and mourned his son many days. Though his sons and daughters tried to console him, he refused all consolation, saying, "No, I will go down mourning my son in the netherworld." Thus did his father lament him. The Midianites, meanwhile, sold Joseph in Egypt to a courtier of Pharaoh and his chief steward. When Joseph was taken down to Egypt, a certain Egyptian brought him before the Ishmaelites who had brought him there. But since the Lord was with him, Joseph got on very well and was assigned to the household of his Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and brought him success in whatever he did, he took a liking to Joseph and made him his personal attendant. He put him in charge of the household and entrusted to him all of his possessions. From the moment that he put him in charge of his household and all his possessions, the Lord blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. In fact, the Lord's blessing was on everything he owned, both inside the house and out. Having left everything he owned in Joseph's charge, he gave no thought, with Joseph there, to anything but the food he ate. Now Joseph was strikingly handsome in countenance and body. After a time, his master's wife began to look fondly at him and said, "Lie with me." But he refused. "As long as I am here," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house, but has entrusted to me all that he owns. He wields no more authority in this house than I do, and he has withheld from me nothing but yourself, since you are his wife. How then could I commit so great a wrong and thus stand condemned before God?" Although she tried to entice him day after day, he would not agree to lie beside her or even stay near her. One such day, when Joseph came into the house to do his work, and none of the household servants were then in the house, she laid hold of him by his cloak, saying, "Lie with me." But, leaving the cloak in her hand, he got away from her and ran outside. When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hands as he fled outside, she screamed for her household servants and told them, "Look, my husband had brought in a Hebrew slave to make sport of us. He came in here to lie with me, but I cried out as loud as I could. When he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran away outside." She kept the cloak with her until his master came home. Then she told him the same story. "The Hebrew slave whom you brought here broke in on me to make sport of me. But when I screamed for help, he left his cloak beside me and fled outside." As soon as the master heard his wife's story about how his slave had treated her, he became enraged. He seized Joseph and threw him into the jail where the royal prisoners were confined. But even while he was in prison, the Lord remained with Joseph. He showed him kindness by making the chief jailer well disposed towards him. The chief jailer put Joseph in charge of all the prisoners in the jail, and everything that had to be done there was done under his management. The chief jailer did not concern himself with anything at all that was in Joseph's charge, since the Lord was with him and brought success to all he did.